Now, at this point, let me welcome my guests on the set, beginning with Sophie Rauser, an advisor for European issues for the unsubmissive France Party, the party being of Jean-Luc Mélenchon, sorry. Also, let me welcome back Minta Dial, a filmmaker and author of and president of Mindset. And we have with us Boris Jamais-Fournier, a Deputy National Delegate for Local Strategy with the Socialist Party. And in addition, we have Anne Le Breton, the Deputy Mayor of the 4th arrondissement, otherwise known as the Marais, here in Paris, who is supporting Emmanuel Macron. And so let me start with you, Sophie. You must be delighted. Anne, terribly sorry, very late in the day. It's been a long day. And you must be delighted with the result.
Of course, elated even.
But there's a lot of hard work ahead because he still hasn't convinced a substantial majority of the French population to vote for him. That is going to come in the next 2 weeks.
Well, we've already started, the evening's not even over, and François Fillon, who was the head of the Republican Party, has already said he would personally vote for him. Benoît Hamon, who is the head of the Socialist Party, has also called to vote for him. And in the same evening, we've already had a lot of people speaking up and calling to vote for us. So, you know, and it's not even one day in the campaign.
So you're confident?
Very confident.
Yeah, but having said that, Macron is coming up against a pretty savvy opponent, Marine Le Pen.
Yes, but, you know, first of all, everybody was expecting her to have 27%. She's now down to 22. We don't exactly know. It's not quite counted yet. But it's the major cities that are not counted, and that's where she does her lower numbers. So it's probably going to be what we see now. She's going to have a very hard time getting a lot more than what she has now. There might be a part of the Republican Party that goes towards her, but honestly, she's not going to be able to bring those 22% to anything major. And what we're looking at is, we'll try to keep her numbers as low as possible.
Okay, at this point, let's cross to Chris Moore, who's been covering Jean-Luc Mélenchon's campaign. And clearly we heard there, Chris, earlier in the night from a very disappointed, but having said that, still relatively defiant Mélenchon, didn't we?
Well, it's what you'd expect from him, really. In terms of disappointment, everything is relative. If you look back 5 years ago, Jean-Luc Mélenchon on election eve was also polling very well and ended up really crashing out at the last minute, overtaken by Marine Le Pen, finishing on, I think it was about 11%. Similarly, if you look where Jean-Luc Mélenchon was just a few weeks ago, 4 or 5 weeks ago, polling at about 12%. As compared to both of those efforts, 19-20% was actually a big success for him. Certainly compared, for example, to the 19 or 20% of François Fillon, who a few months ago was expected to do much better than that. But I think there's a real sense here of a missed opportunity. There was just a couple of percent in it. Of course, there was that potential alliance mooted back a couple of months ago in the campaign between Benoît Hamon, the official Socialist Party candidate, and Jean-Luc Mélenchon. Had that materialised, that would actually have been potentially the biggest voting bloc. So, yeah, there is a disappointment here, but Jean-Luc Mélenchon, as you said, defiant. You wouldn't expect him to be anything else, saying that unsubmissive France, la France insoumise, will continue as a movement. He says it's a movement based in youth, based in the future, and one which comes at a time when the fault lines of French politics are clearly changing. But once again, things, as they always have been, really a little bit divided on the left. It's a bit uncertain as to what kind of left-wing formations will emerge in the future.
That's Chris Moore. Thank you for that. Chris Moore at Jean-Luc Mélenchon's headquarters. At this point, let me bring in Sophie Rauser, who works with the Jean-Luc Mélenchon campaign. Chris was talking there about the possibility of what would have been an alliance between the socialist candidate Benoît Hamon and Mélenchon. Obviously, that didn't eventuate. Was that a bad move?
Well, first, let me say that we're still waiting for the official final results.
We did a very good campaign. What is happening now, and that we would probably agree with Anne Le Breton, is that we have a totally new political landscape in France. You know, the two candidates of the primaries, both from the right wing and the Social Dems, clearly are done. So you have now a new timing in the political spectrum going on in France. So of course it's it's a pity that we are probably, you know, just a handful away from the second turn. It's a pity that we are missing a couple of voters. And in that sense, yes, it's a pity that we didn't manage to have some kind of support in one way or the other from Benoît Hamon. But still, we are very hopeful also for the future, because, you know, you have the legislative election coming up on the 11th of June. And there, you know, it's going to be pretty challenging as well for Mr. Macron to get a coherent parliamentary group when he's trying to make some kind of, you know, mix of former Républicains and former Social Democrats that will probably have some kind of ego fighting in between each other to get some kind of legislative seats. So we will see how this is going. But as it was said earlier, we are pretty optimistic because we are deeply rooted. We have a grassroots movement full of youngsters, full of female candidates up to come on the legislative scale. So we keep on.
Boris, given that you're here as a representative of the Socialist Party, I mean, Jean-Luc Mélenchon might be 65 years old, but he's certainly not going away, and certainly his movement is gathering steam. What next for the left, especially given that your party was effectively decimated in this round of voting?
So actually, he's 65, but he said a few months ago that this was his last run. So, you know, who knows
but he's
what's
built
ahead.
a movement.
And to be honest, I don't quite agree with Sophie here when she's with this narrative, when she's talking about how it's a total reshuffle of the political landscape. I'm not sure. First of all, it's not the end of this political era here. We had the first round of the presidential election. Remember, it's only step one of four steps, with the second round and also the 2 rounds of the general election. So we haven't seen so far a total reshuffle of the political landscape. But having said that, of course, this result is a big disappointment for the Socialist Party. But again, it's not the end of the road, definitely not for the Socialist Party. And we'll see what happens in the general election. And before that, in the second round, obviously very happy that my candidate, Benoît Hamon, called for a vote in favor of Emmanuel Macron, because in the end, what matters is to defeat the far right, and obviously never good news when the far right makes it to the second round of the election.
At this point, let's just take a listen to what French Prime Minister Bernard Cazeneuve had to say earlier in the evening, he himself, of course, being a member of the Socialist Party.
Tonight, the fact that a far-right candidate has made it to the second round of the presidential elections, 15 years after the shock of 2002, obliges all French people to take a clear and strong position. That's why I call on them solemnly to vote for Emmanuel Macron in the second round, to beat the National Front and defeat their dark program, which seeks to take France backward and divide the French people.
Boris, we were hearing there from the Prime Minister saying that, you know, the time has come to support Macron, but there was enormous disarray in your party. I mean, there was calls of betrayal for various Socialist Party officials who had openly backed Macron. I mean, where to from here?
Sure. I mean, I think Macron played a very dangerous game, to be honest, because he mixed up left and right as if the left and right it didn't mean anything. As if it didn't matter that the French people wanted a better education, and President Hollande had increased education jobs by 60,000. As if it didn't matter that people wanted more transparency, and the Hollande majority voted 2 bills on transparency, and the right didn't vote for those bills. As if people didn't want marriage equality, and the right hadn't voted against marriage equality when President Hollande enacted this change. So I feel like what Macron did in this campaign, saying that the left basically equals to right, and these divisions are no longer relevant. I think this was a very dangerous game.
Well, I refute this completely because that's not at all what he did. On the contrary, he took the best of the left and the best of the right. So it's a completely different project from what you're describing.
But that's exactly what Marine Le Pen has been saying the whole time. She's been talking about the UMPS as this coalescence of the Parti Socialiste and the UMP. And basically what Macron did is pretty much what she's been describing all along. And so that's why I feel a little ill at ease with this project and this movement.
Well, let's be honest. What happened here is that people did not feel comfortable either in the rightist party, and that's why it's really split in two. And we'll see that tomorrow they're going to start. It's going to be war, and people were not feeling comfortable within the Socialist Party. There was a much more radically left part that was fighting constantly with more social democratic part. And so what's happening now is that the social democrats and the progressists have united together to try to rule France in that section of the...
I mean, we'll agree on this. Liberals win when they are together, and they weren't in this election, and that's why we didn't win.
So who do you think is going to win in the first round? In the second round.
In the second round. I certainly hope that Emmanuel Macron will win. And again, I'm very happy that my candidate is backing Emmanuel Macron. And to be quite honest, I'm a little worried when Mr. Mélenchon doesn't call for a vote in favor of Emmanuel Macron, which is the only way to defeat Marine Le Pen, who's supposed to be our common enemy.
Sophie?
Supposed to.
Well, we said it straight from the beginning. Marine Le Pen is clearly our enemy. What we also said is that the way we created our movement is a grassroots movement. So we consult people. This is the way we created our program, and this is the way we will go on. So we will make an internal referendum to know what is their opinion on whether or not to back clearly Emmanuel Macron. So
interesting
it's a different
interesting that a grassroots candidate would
Sorry,
not go
I don't have any
primary.
lesson to receive from a social democracy that has been completely wiped out.
It's not a question of lessons. I'm just pointing out the fact. I'm just pointing out the fact that a supposedly grassroots movement did not go through a primary election to designate their candidate in this election. And I think, it was to Benoît Hamon's credit to go through this primary process, and that's why he was a legitimate candidate.
Can I just say at this point, and Anne just had a very relevant point.
Legitimate results.
Anne just made a very relevant point there, which is you, by this sort of argument and this difference of opinions, pretty much illustrate the very problem with the left at the moment. It is massively divided. How do you guys move forward?
It's not divided. There is, within the Socialist Party, it is divided. It is clearly, Benoît Hamon never said what you said, he was never backing François Hollande legislature like 100%. He was very, very awkward in the way he was framing it. So within the Socialist Party, this is why, straight from the beginning, after Benoît Hamon was legitimately elected within the Socialist Party primary process, then he was stabbed. How many times was he stabbed in the back by his people within his very party? I mean, this is incredible. And what do you expect? That Jean-Luc Mélenchon would go to such a primary process and then be exactly like Benoît Hamon, be stabbed in the back all during the campaign? We could not afford such a move because we knew it straight.
Democracy?
It's not a question of democracy. It's primary election have shown clearly that the legitimacy of this process is disgustable, to say the least. I mean, so you have within the social democracy family, let's say, and not only the Socialist Party, I can grant you that. But I mean, clearly there's a divide between the people who are in favor of more neoliberalism, more free trade agreements, more of that kind of the European Union actually currently in place. And then you have people very sincere, and I can grant that to Benoît Hamon, that he was sincerely a left-wing candidate. The problem, it was never Benoît Hamon, was his own party stabbing him in the back.
Okay, at this point, let's take a listen to the person who I suspect is going to have to unify the left, and that being, of course, Marine Le Pen, whose acceptance speech she made earlier in the evening, and having received more than 20% of the vote, and of course is making it through to the second round. Let's just take a listen to what she had to say earlier this evening.
French people must seize on this historical opportunity. The real challenge of this election is savage globalization, which puts our civilization in danger. French people have a very simple choice to make. Either we continue on this path of complete deregulation, without borders, without protection, which leads to outsourcing, unfair international competition, mass immigration, and the free movement of terrorists. In this system, money is king. Or you can choose France, borders that protect our jobs, our purchasing power, our security, and our national identity.
Now, many of you around this table are supporting either the left or centre, but I'd like to take a listen to some of those who actually are supporting Marine Le Pen.
Do you think she can win the second round?
Of course, it's not difficult. All we need is for France to wake up a bit more. Some have already woken up, unfortunately not enough, but we still believe.
I hope the French people understand if in 15 days French people vote for Macron, that means they've understood nothing and France is finished.
I'm really very happy that she's going to be in the second round. And the 2 points that Emmanuel Macron is ahead by, I think Marine Le Pen will make it up and will win herself by 2 points.
Minter Dial is a filmmaker and author and president of Mindset. You've been very quiet here, but it's interesting, I imagine, as a brand strategist, to look at these three people. Mm-hmm. They represent the centre or the left of the French political spectrum. There's a tough job ahead in the next 2 weeks for Macron to convince that he's the guy, he can do it, despite his youth, despite the fact that there are people on the left who are suspicious of him, there are people on the right who are extremely suspicious of him. What is he going to have to do in order to get to that point?
Well, so I think he has a gift in one respect, in that he has Le Pen, who has, in my opinion, shot herself in the foot by being right in some respects and left in the other. And by being not strong in either, she will actually have a difficulty rallying everyone around her, taking Mélenchon's, voters or others from the left, and applying a very far right-wing philosophy politically is not going to help her. So I think, in that respect, Macron has something of a layup. The challenge for Macron isn't necessarily getting voted in a couple of weeks' time. I think that's going to be something of a shoe-in. The French population has done it before. 2002, they know how to rally round. It would have had taken Le Pen having 34% in this round and having a 30% abstention for her, if you look at how all the jockeying would go on afterwards, for her to win in round two. So that's not the problem. What I think Macron has as problem is not only his youth, he has to define a vision that is clarity and unites. And then behind that, he has to galvanize a team. And the hiccup in that team is to be able to find a team that doesn't represent everything he's been against, which is the institution. So how is he going to fabricate a government that knows how to make it work, but doesn't look like it's anchored down by people who come from the past? And I think that is going to be his challenge.
Anne.
So that he's already answered those questions. He's very clearly, we're going to present 577 candidates for the legislative elections. We want to present a lot of women, like you, and we want to put them in places where they're going to win, which, unlike the old parties who always put women in places where they lost most of the time.
HR.
That's why we have so few women in our parliament. So that's a very strong thing for him. He's half of the candidates are going to be professional people who come from, who've never been elected, but who are professional, who are very good in one thing that they do and who know a subject. So those are going to be half of the candidates. And the other half of the candidates are going to be divided between right, center, and left among people who have political experience. Because it's very important in our party to mix the old and the new and to mix experience with novelty. There are a lot of young people. So we're also going to mix age. They're going to be very young people who are going to get elected. And that was the main point of our project. It was to renew French politics.
Boris, you're shaking your head there.
Yeah, I am, because I want to make 2 points very clear. First of all, on gender equality, I've been hearing this over and over again. This is thanks to the left that we have gender equality in politics in this country. And again, time and time over again, candidates in the Socialist Party are 50% female, and this is, again, the case for the general election coming up next month. So I have a little bit of a hard time hearing that Emmanuel Macron is the candidate with a lot of women around him.
It doesn't. She's not actually made a point that's against that. It's
no, I am not.
But the thing is, people brand Emmanuel Macron as the feminist candidate, and I have a little bit.
She's saying is they have a different people, not politicians from the past.
She did mention women,
of course, of which there will be many women.
Boris, but the point of the matter is, your candidate didn't win.
He did not.
Yeah, and Emmanuel Macron did.
He did.
So let's talk about what lies ahead for Macron. And for you as a socialist, how hard is it going to be for you to cast your vote for Emmanuel Macron 2 weeks from now?
It's not going to be hard at all. Because what you said earlier, you said Marine Le Pen is unifying the left. To be quite honest, I don't think that's true at all. I think Marine Le Pen
unifying against, she meant.
I understand that, but I want to, of course,
yes.
But I want to make it clear that she's not unifying anyone. She's dividing. She's dividing France. She's dividing the French people. She is a sexist. She is a bigot. She is someone who wants to do away with the European Union. She's not unifying anyone.
Okay, let's hear now from the defeated socialist candidate, Benoît Hamon.
The elimination of the left by the far right for the second time in 15 years is not only a heavy electoral defeat, it signifies a moral defeat for the country and for the left in particular. The entire left wing must hear your message tonight. Enough. Enough of the self-destructive madness that has let us forget those who have fought for the left throughout history, and also those for whom the left must fight every day.
Benoît, when you see your leader there talking in that fashion, what do you feel?
I mean, I think he's right. I think we need to have the people's interest at heart, and sometimes, with a lot of strategy and a lot of, these new phenomena that have existed in French politics that happen. Sometimes we forget what we need to focus on. What we need to focus on is what the French people need. For instance, that's actually what Benoît Hamon did with his basic income policy, which was a true answer to people's needs. I think maybe the campaign did not do a good enough job to sell it to the French people, because obviously we didn't win. But I think that's what we need to do.
Sophie, when you listen to what Boris has to say in terms of the future of the socialist movement, where do you see the left going from here? What do you think is going to happen now?
Well, again, I think in the legislative election, we will manage to get a very good result. I'm very optimistic about this. There were 3 lines, let's say, defended in this campaign. There was the candidate of the extreme austerity, that is Emmanuel Macron. There was the candidate of the extreme fear, the French race first, kind of, as Trump could call it, Marine Le Pen. And then there was the candidate of social justice and fair international cooperation. So those 3 lines exist in France, and we will keeping going. And maybe, maybe in the end, some members of the Socialist Party will end up voting with our parliamentary group in the end on some questions, up to some votes to come in the next National Assembly.
Do you think we're witnessing the death of the Socialist Party, though?
Probably, but it happened in Greece with the PASOK. It's happening currently in Spain with PSOE. Yes, it's not the death of the socialist ideas or of the left. It's clearly the death of the social democracy across Europe, because that social democracy never dealt a problem within their party in terms of political line of, again, what kind of European Union they wanted. Was it a kind of free trade and all about the market and multinationals they wanted? I'm not saying it's like Benoît Hamon's case. I'm saying that it exists within Social Dems, and we clearly see it in the European Parliament, for example. It's clearly divided. There's clearly in the Social Democratic Party and in the European Parliament, there is clearly a right wing and a left wing. Until they have managed to deal their internal problem, I think it's a challenge. It's a risk for them. But we don't have this with this problematic. We keep going on with the France Insoumise movement, and we will stay open to any member who wants to join.
Let me just add that the Socialist Party has been declared dead many times over its 112 years of history, and it hasn't happened yet. So,
Anne?
And I will disagree with your own description of yourself very much, because you have tried to put in front of everybody a very nice and soft image of yourself, but it's hiding and trying to surf on the Bernie Sanders wave. But really, Jean-Luc Mélenchon is no Bernie Sanders. He's a very irate man who can call journalists scum, and has done so several times. Everybody can go and look at all his videos of a kind of very unpleasant, very irate man. You also manipulate your voters a lot. I have been canvassing on the streets a lot, and all I see, so many people tell me they're hesitating between Macron and Mélenchon. They don't know what's in your program. And when you tell them that you intend to leave Europe, most of them are very surprised and decide not to vote for you. So what happened is that Jean-Luc Mélenchon went up very, very rapidly at the end of the campaign. He was very low at the beginning of the campaign, so nobody paid any attention to the France Insoumise. So nobody was fighting them project against project. And when they came up very, very quickly, as a kind of, fashionable wave, and especially among the young, it was very hard to get into, fighting project against project. And I don't think you're going to do very well in the legislative election. We'll see.
We will see. But it's surely not about a man. And you cannot say that we didn't manage a good campaign, and it's not about the program. We cannot achieve such a high result coming where we're coming from if it's not with a good program. This has been clearly demonstrated, and I mean, all the media can agree that we did a very good campaign.
You did a very good campaign.
Of course, it's not about insulting media. It's also about challenging some kind of mainstream media that were backing Emmanuel Macron straight from the beginning. It's kind of a democratic issue as well. And we never said we want to leave Europe. Sorry, madam, I'm in charge of your European affairs in the France Insoumise.
Exactly?
That we need to profoundly reform Europe if you want to save it, because it's going to a crisis. We are not saying like Emmanuel Macron that we want more of this kind of Europe. We want a different one.
At this point, let's just listen to what Jean-Luc Mélenchon had to say earlier in his speech to his supporters.
Médiacrates et oligarques jubilent.
The media and the oligarchy are jubilant. For them, nothing is so beautiful as a final round between two candidates who both support the status quo and who show no concern for the environment or for the peril facing human civilization.
Aucune prise de conscience écologique.
Sophie, you just heard there from Jean-Luc Mélenchon. You were just having a rather lively discussion with Anne here, who represents the En Marche movement, but about this debate of he never said he was going to leave Europe. What is, in fact, his stance on all this? And to be honest, is he still going to be around, given, as Boris pointed out, that he's already said that he's 65 years old and this was his last campaign?
We will see how it goes on and when Jean-Luc wants to retire or not. But the question for us is, and he said it clearly. I mean, I'm passing on here. I'm giving, making room for the youngsters. I'm making room for, as I said in the beginning, for new MPs, for younger MPs, for more female as well. And so yes, he's deeply aware that he needs to pass on, and this is what we created in this campaign, is also making room for the
So it's
future
not just
generation.
around him. I mean, if he goes...
Absolutely not. Yes, of course. I mean, we have to do such a campaign. Of course, we had a good spokesperson, and we are not going to apologize for having such a good speaker. But of course, he's here also to pass on, and he will do so.
And you were pointing out that there were flaws in what Jean-Luc Mélenchon was saying. But at the end of the day, he is not going through to the first round. Your candidate is.
Yes, and I'm very happy that is so.
So in terms of what happens now with Macron, because you've got here examples of young people who support the left, what does Macron have to do in order to get these people on board?
Well, I think a lot of them are going to come very naturally because a lot of people voted for Mélenchon because he had a good campaign, a fun campaign. And because also it happened very much at the end of the campaign, so there was kind of a buzz about it. So a lot of those the Mélenchon voters will naturally vote for us because also a lot of them are against the extreme right. So I don't think we're going to have much problem bringing them in with us and with our project also. Because we have a project that's very much oriented towards the young and towards getting them back to work and making a more positive France. And so a lot of the Mélenchon voters will find a place in our project.
Boris.
Let's not be overconfident, but I was 18 in 2002 when Jean-Marie Le Pen was in the second round of the election, and I can tell you that this deeply impacted and was very traumatic for my generation. So I'm confident that a lot of youth will actually turn out and vote for Emmanuel Macron in the second round. And that's also why I'm very, very scared that Jean-Luc Mélenchon did not call for a vote for Emmanuel Macron tonight.
Winter?
So I have an external viewpoint. I mean, although I have a French citizenship, I think what I'd like to focus on is how we're actually going to make stuff happen. And I think nothing is really, I feel like at some level, nothing has changed since 2002. So we're going to get back to a situation where we have this person we don't want, and we're going to vote for this other person, which some people want. Other people are going to vote by default because we don't want that one. The challenge is now moving from this almost unanimous decision, hopefully, to actually making things happen. And I'm going to take one provocative statement, which is Trump is very much in the same ilk. I'm going to hire business people. I'm going to hire different people, not many women, but let's say I'm going to hire different people.
That might be a big difference, yes.
That's true, which is a bad one. And I'm going to hire different people that are not from part of the institution. But what he finds out is actually it doesn't work that way. I need to know how to make things go through. And it turns out, even with his own party, because he actually hasn't defined his program with clarity and has a value system that resonates with the entire Republican Party, he's finding it difficult not only within government in general, but within his own party to get things to happen. So what happens is that breaks down very quickly. The sort of the excitement of the initial victory breaks down as the bureaucrats who are not elected saying, I'll put a little, as they say in French, un bâton dans les roues. And then it breaks down and it doesn't actually change.
But what you're describing there is a completely different situation. You're describing a president who was elected against his party's main policies. What we're describing with Emmanuel Macron is a president who's going to be elected with a group of people who agree with his policy.
Well, so if I may, so I'm not saying that Trump and Macron are the same person. What I'm trying to look at are the lessons you can learn and adapt to the French situation. Because yes, he didn't have, En Marche didn't exist a year ago. So of course, I'm not saying he's the Republican or the Democrat. It's not comparable on that level. However, what is comparable is how governments function. And you do have these bureaucrats. And you do need to get laws to go through. And you need to galvanize people. And in a country, the difference of France is you have 11 parties. And they have to get together. And they have to, fighting within the party, without the party, and then making things happen on the field in such a way that real change happens. That's the problem.
But that's also why we said very clearly that we're not going to have a party with 100% of new. We're definitely, and that is the big difference, we're mixing the two. And because we need the experience of people who have been elected of people who have been MPs, and we have people who are now a member of parliament from the left, from the right, who are with us. And
just like
so
Trump,
we have experience and new.
I agree. Trump is coming back, and he's finding out that he needs more of the old than the new. And we'll just see where that barrier goes.
Can at this point, let me just take a listen to what Emmanuel Macron has to say about this, because he says that he's changed the French political landscape forever. Let's just hear what he had to say exactly.
In 1 year, we have changed the face of French politics. The deep, organic feeling that has always carried our people, their investment in the nation, the energy they have shown to support the collective interest, bypassing personal divisions, that is what won tonight.
That was Emmanuel Macron earlier this evening. Sophie, has he really changed everything?
Ooh,
Emmanuel Macron?
Well, it's yet to come. We will see. I mean, don't forget, contrary to I understand your description, but it's also true that the French regime is pretty much presidential. So it's not a proportional election that we are going to see in the legislative. So this kind of can make it a bit more difficult as well for Emmanuel Macron. It's not like as simple as you get a president and you get the correspondent majority, especially when you're pretty much a beginner, let's say, at this level.
At this point, I'd like to ask Anne a question related to what Minter just said. When he started En Marche, Emmanuel Macron was very clear that it was not a political party. But the thing is, it's a political organization with candidates, actually only 14 at this point, with supposedly a political platform. So what exactly is the difference between En Marche and a political party?
Well, I think we're definitely going into what's becoming a political party. We were a movement, a grassroots movement, because we also we really started from nothing, unlike you. We really started from nothing in a year. And of course, everything is getting organized now and structured. And it's very well structured. And you'll see, we'll have a majority in the election, I'm sure.
Minter, Anne's just pointing out that he is dealing with realpolitik in a way, that he's taking some of the existing, infrastructure and merging it with the new, so to speak. But having said that, how much is he going to be able to change if indeed he does win the presidency? Because the reality of governing a country is very different from being on the campaign trail.
Yeah, and I mean, let's say that, take my reference with Trump, he's found out it's very difficult without the experience. I think what has to happen is that he has to do some serious, hard decisions within the first 100 days. And that means that there'll be reactions, as we love to do in France. And he has to have the ability, even though there's reactions on the street, because if he really wants to make the economy different, he has to break down a lot of old acquired thoughts and things that we've been given, as we say in French, les acquis.
He already said he would break down labor laws with executive orders, which is actually kind of worrisome.
There are, of course, going to be parallels with, let's say, the Trump...
This is why you were supporting him straight from the beginning, or...?
I was not supporting him straight from the beginning. I'm supporting him because he's up against Marine Le Pen, and she's the worst threat that exists to this country.
So in a way, Marine Le Pen is unifying. I mean, in terms of what are you going to do, Sophie, 2 weeks from
surely,
now?
as I said in the beginning, surely we are not going to support... we are not going to support a xenophobic agenda, so that's for sure. And as we said already also, this is a grassroots movement, and this is the very reason why we are going to consult our members. We have more than around 440,000 members now, so pretty much, it's going to stay a movement, contrary to maybe what you stated for Emmanuel Macron earlier. I mean, it's never going to be a party, because we want to keep that structure of involving citizens all the time. So yes, we will have that internal consultation. This is the technical thing, very easy to manage on our platform online, and then we can have a result within a couple of it's a matter of 1 or 2 days.
And then what? And then what happens?
And then we have an official result, and we announce the official result.
If they say Marine Le Pen is not a threat?
They will never say Marine Le Pen.
Okay, so then why not call for support for Emmanuel Macron right now then?
We believe in people's collective intelligence.
We also do. That's why we went through a primary process, which you rejected.
Yes, for not being stabbed by Manuel Valls and your friends.
You see that the left is going to still have a problem, and that's going to go on for a long time. And meanwhile, we're not
gathering
going to be able
We did a campaign to gather the French citizens, not the left. This is also a difference, and this is why we couldn't, feel ourselves being in a primary of the so-called left with people we consider right. So we stayed out of this.
What you're not saying is how scared a lot of French people were of you. You're not saying that you're in the conspiracy theory, that you're...
Are we in the conspiracy theory?
Yes.
Did we deny the 9/11?
No, maybe not
like
all
this?
of that, but in a lot of other things.
Which things?
You're not saying in front.
Name it.
No, I'm not going to go into details.
Well,
you're not saying
lying. You're clearly lying.
No, I'm not lying.
Like, how can you accuse of being complotist? No,
well,
okay.
Really,
at this point, let's talk about the right unifying the left, but more importantly, let's talk about somebody who has indeed said that he is calling on his supporters to vote for Emmanuel Macron, and that is the candidate for the Conservative Party, the Republican, François Fillon, having delivered his concession speech after failing to reach the second round of voting. It's a result that few would have predicted 5 months ago when he won the primary for the party. But the intervening months have seen irreparable damage to his credibility thanks to a series of allegations involving his wife being employed along with other members of his family by himself, and as a result, a precipitous fall. Brian Quinn has the story.
Just 3 months ago, he was the future president of France. Sunday night, François Fillon took the podium to address his supporters and admit defeat.
Despite all my efforts, despite my determination, I haven't managed to convince you. The obstacles put in my way were too many, too cruel. The moment has come. The truth of this election will be written. For now, I accept my responsibilities.
In November, Fillon came from behind to win the country's conservative primary against favorite Alain Juppé and former President Nicolas Sarkozy. His argument that against two rivals with compromising legal troubles in their pasts, he was the candidate who was irreproachable. Then scandal. In January, investigative newspaper Le Canard Enchaîné revealed that Fillon had paid his wife hundreds of thousands of euros in public funds for parliamentary work she may never have done. As allegations against the Fillons widened and criminal investigations took shape, his poll numbers began to fall. By March, 3/4 of the electorate wanted him out of the race. But Fillon held firm. With little alternative, French conservatives united behind him.
For me, it is clear. The interests of France require each of us to vote without hesitation for François Fillon.
When the rise of far-left wildcard Jean-Luc Mélenchon made the first round a four-way race, it looked as though Fillon's damaged support might still be enough to see him through to the second round. On Sunday, it was clear that wasn't to be. The right will now fall in line behind the center as France's political mainstream tries once again to hold back the National Front.
Without hesitation, I choose tonight to give my support to Emmanuel Macron in his battle with the far right, a far right that would lead France to disaster.
For Fillon, it's back to private life and the ongoing investigations that still await him there.
And that was François Fillon, who earlier this evening asked his supporters to pledge their support for the centrist candidate Emmanuel Macron. Now, as it turns out, here with me are three people from the centre and left shade of the political spectrum, along with Minter Dial, who's a brand strategist. I want to start off with Sophie, who was an advisor or is an advisor on European issues for Jean-Luc Mélenchon's campaign. You there were having a rather lively discussion with Boris Jamais Fournier from the Socialist Party, yet again revealing the divisions in the left. You now have a critical point in the country's political history. You have Marine Le Pen going through to the first round. How is the left going to combat Marine Le Pen? Sophie?
I think we can agree both here on certain number of issues that we can challenge together while sitting in the National Assembly, for example. I mean, both on even, you know, not only Marine Le Pen's project, but also the vision Emmanuel Macron has in terms of economy. For example, if you remember well, you know, in terms of when we had the Loi El Khomri, Marine Le Pen was very, very, to say the least, you know, not very clear on what she was wanting. You know, like she pretends she defends workers, but you know she was against the demonstrations. It was she was agreeing with some parts of the legislation, something totally not understandable for most people. So I think we will agree on the fact that we need to defend workers. We don't want a society that was that would be all about Uber world for all. On these subjects, I think we can clearly, you know, work together, and the future will show this.
Boris?
For us, I mean, Emmanuel Macron is a candidate who is attached to the core values of the French Republic, liberté, égalité, fraternité. He's a candidate who's not afraid of the outside, and that's very important. And he's also not a candidate who's plagued with corruption scandals like Marine Le Pen is. So 3 talking points to help left-wing voters cast their vote for Emmanuel Macron against Marine Le Pen in 2 weeks.
And what's your response to that?
Well, I think we have managed in a way to fight Marine Le Pen because we have managed to be ahead of her in this election. So that's already a start. And we want to talk to her voters. A lot of the people who vote for her out of despair, out of lack of future. If you transform that situation, give France the idea that it has a future, try to look at things in a brighter way. There's a lot of problems in France that lie in the fact that there's kind of a general depression. Breaking that depression will break Marine Le Pen and put her back into, you know, a much lower bracket where she was before. And so that's our project, is also to give people who want to vote for Marine Le Pen another reason to vote for another candidate. And so it's a completely different project.
Minta, you're not associated with any political party, but as a strategist and as an observer in this whole discussion here, do you think that the left will be able to bridge the divide and throw their support behind Emmanuel Macron? And do you think that Macron's chances will increase as a result?
Well, I think in the next 2 weeks, his job is defining sufficiently a program that allies and rallies enough of the people. It's not going to take that much to get people to think smart and know that that's who they want to supports the French values and all that. I think that program needs to be clarified, in my opinion. And second of all, it probably would be helpful to be a little bit stronger about the defense of France, make sure there's no terrorist act that happens between now and then. And then the second thing is, and really the most important thing is, make sure that more people vote. If tensions are higher, then the risks of a slightly closer battle, it happens. So everybody needs to support people to vote, get everybody out, the young, the old, every vote counts kind of feeling, and then by definition, without doubt, he passes.
Okay, at that point I want to thank my guests for what's been a very lively discussion at the end of a rather long night for all of us here at France 24. Let me thank Sophie Rauser, Advisor for European Issues with Jean-Luc Mélenchon's campaign, Minta Dial, filmmaker and author, Boris Jamais Fournier, a Deputy National Delegate for Digital Strategy and a member of the Socialist Party, and Anne Le Breton, who's got a very busy few weeks ahead of her because not only when she's not being the Deputy Mayor of the 4th arrondissement here in Paris, is a supporter of Emmanuel Macron and no doubt will be working with his team to see that he makes it through to become the country's next president. But of course, just reminding those who have just joined us, maybe you have, and don't know that it is indeed going to be centrist candidate Emmanuel Macron who will face off Marine Le Pen of the National Front in the second round on May 7th. First official estimates back at 8 p.m. Earlier this evening showed that Macron had obtained 23.9%, with Le Pen getting 21.7%. However, again, we're still waiting for full results from the Interior Ministry, who did release earlier in the evening partial results with 20 million votes showing that Le Pen is on 24.38% and Macron on 22.19%. Having said that, we're still waiting to hear for the official final results. That's it from this team. Thank you so much. The last few hours was produced by the extraordinarily able Daniel Barney. Do stay with us here in France 24 as Thomas Waterhouse will be taking over, continuing our very special coverage of the first round of the presidential vote here in France.